thank you all very much for coming here. It's really an amazing event. Thank you to Alicia for all the unbelievable. There's people that you come across in life that you tell them that there's no ceiling on what they can do in their job, and they make a ceiling. And then there's people like Alicia that just blow it up. Mrs. Alicia here blowing it up. So great. And I was supposed to talk primarily about the research that we're doing at IORD, and it's pretty cool stuff, but I think I'd just kill you guys if I went through all of it in detail. So I really want to change the topic a little bit to talk about why we're doing it. And I'll talk a little bit about our results, but sometimes research is as much about what doesn't work as what works. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. There was a lot of enthusiasm. The techniques improved. By 1995, this was the most common orthopedic procedure performed in the world. There are something like 3 million knee arthroscopies done annually in the world, and the cost in the United States is over $3 billion for those arthroscopies alone. And purported benefits for knee arthroscopies included almost everything in the knee, right? We're looking in there, and on the left-hand side, I've got some examples of what knee arthroscopy is, because most of you are not orthopedic surgeons. A knee arthroscopy is a procedure where they can insert a camera with a light and through a very small incision and look inside the knee joint. Well, anyway, this was thought to improve, you could use this eventually to treat everything from knee arthritis to ligament injuries and pain. And then in 2002 at the Houston VA, a surgeon started critically looking at how well knee arthroscopy worked for knee arthritis. And that was really at that point ingrained in the US culture to scope a knee, and the idea was, well, you got an arthritic knee, I'm going to scope it before we do a knee replacement, because that's somehow a procedure that's less invasive, and we'll get there if we need to, and hopefully delay it by doing an arthroscope. And so the surgeon at the VA clinic in Houston found 180 of his patients agreed to randomize themselves in a study. And so they all went to surgery, and they all went to sleep, and then they drew numbers out of a hat, and a third of them received what was at the time considered standard of care, which was an arthroscopic sort of debridement of the arthritis, clean up any meniscus tears, chondral flaps, wash out the joint. The second third of the patients in the study received what was popular in Scandinavia at the time, which was just a lavage. There was fluid that went in one incision and fluid that came out the other one. And the third group received sham surgery. So they went under the same anesthetic, small incisions, and all three groups were followed up by a group of doctors who had no idea what their treatment was. The patients never found out, and the following doctors never found out. They were followed up for a post-op visit every month for 6 months, and then every year for 2 years after surgery. And the results of that clinical trial showed that there was no benefit. At no point did those patients that received any type of intervention have better pain, better scores, better function than the patients receiving sham surgery. So in this study, they found out pretty conclusively that arthroscopic surgery for knee arthritis doesn't help. What did the world say about that? Most of the orthopedic surgeons out there said, here's a guy who's bad at arthroscopy, right? So there was at least 6 more studies subsequently after this one, all of them showing exactly the same thing. Knee arthroscopy doesn't work for arthritis. In 2006, a very well-known orthopedic company announced that they had designed a new implant. It was designed primarily for females. This was an implant that was going to solve patient dissatisfaction for women having knee replacement surgery. They called it the female knee. They designed the knee. It was based on some science and anatomic differences that they had found with women's knees using a CT scan. They marketed their knee replacement, and they sold it to hundreds of thousands of people. Sold it. And then finally, they studied the results. And in every study since that time, it's been shown that there's no clinical benefit to the female knee. And I think they got their formula a little bit backwards there. Maybe they should have studied it a little earlier, but this is still commonly available in the United States, the female gender knee. It sounds exciting. It comes in a pink box. So evidence-based medicine, what do we mean by evidence? We're here to generate evidence-based medicine, it's really important, but what is evidence? And evidence means that we're doing some sort of clinical trial. It sounds boring, but or we're using a study that compiles clinical trials together to make some sort of statistical analysis about the outcomes. And most important studies should have some form of randomization. So they're randomizing between two possible treatments. They're best if they have a placebo, because the placebo is super powerful in what we do. And it's really humbling to find out how well the placebo works. And then if the studies are blinded, like the patients don't know what they got, the doctors don't know what they got, that's even more powerful. So those are all kind of the things. Here's an opportunity for some audience participation. I'm not as good as everyone else at this, but I call these fun and scary facts. What year did we start to adopt evidence-based medicine in our field? Because we all want, go to our doctors and think they know what we're talking about and stuff. So did we start this in 1815, 1927, 1968? Sound about right? How about 1992? Yeah, that's when we started. We started thinking that we should do look for some sort of real evidence behind our treatments in 1992. Kind of crazy, right? Here's another one. What percent, when you go to the doctor's office, and I got some of my primary care doctor's friends here, this is actually a primary care study, but it would be worse if it was I promise you, worse in an orthopedics office, but what percent of current clinical decisions are based on evidence-based, meaning there's a trial or some sort of study to support the decision that's being made in the office? What do you guys think? I think it's 92% of decisions. How about 85%? No? 53%? Anybody? No? How about 18%? That's where we're at right there. 18% is our best. When they make a decision about your care, only 18% of the time is it based on an actual evidence, real evidence that it works. So that's kind of crazy, right? I didn't know my favorite patient in the world was going to be here tonight. I sat down for dinner and I looked to my left, and here she is. So this was a slide that I made before I knew she. So anyway, you guys heard her story. You know about the deal. Back in 2014, I saw her. I had already done one of her knees, and she had this horrendous response to narcotics. I mean, it was like, a single tramadol, and she was nauseated for 3 days. And she's not a big woman. She was small at the time, and she came in almost like, it was awful for her, and I felt terrible. She came back a year later and said I needed my other knee done, and she wants to give me credit for it, but I'm not going to take credit for it. What happened was, I was worried about her, and I was worried I couldn't do a knee replacement that didn't have narcotics in the formula. And so I went to some of my anesthesia friends who'd been doing a pain management fellowship. These guys are great. And they're like, yeah, I don't know, man, but there's this new technology out there, and we should talk about maybe trying it on her. And it was this idea of a genicular nerve ablation. So this was not my idea, okay? But they'd been reading about it, looking into it. It hadn't been researched a whole bunch at the time, and it was this deal where they had a standard version where you could go in and thermally damage or ablate nerves, and they were thinking maybe we could try it in the knee, right? And there was two versions of it. One of it was a standard probe that had a relatively small zone of injury, and then they had this really cool idea that came from another company that you could put a probe in that the temperatures didn't get so high right up against the probe, but it would create a larger lesion. So a lot of these nerves you can't see. You just got to hope you're in the right spot. They're kind of mapped out, but the larger lesion approach appeared to be possibly a better one. We wanted to look at all those. And this is kind of what it looked like in the knee. There are these sensory nerves that come off the big nerve in the leg called the femoral nerve, and they all innervate the capsule around the joint. So the idea was if we could turn those nerves off for a period of time, and in the sciences that they actually regrow, that the patients would be able to go through the knee operation and have less pain. What an awesome idea. And so I told her it was experimental. We had no idea whether it would work or not. And so we did it. And you guys have heard the story. I walked away thinking, man, this is pretty cool. We got to study this. This is something that we need to know more about, right? And so that's how we started all this, and how I found Alicia, and how we started a little research project that turned into a grant, and then turned into, that you guys are all here tonight. It's awesome. We actually participated in two different studies at the time. One of them was can we use this RFA technology to help manage knee arthritis type pain? Because Adam, Dr. Holzkamp was saying, we don't have a lot of stuff in our toolbox, right? We don't have all the tools we'd like, and some people have more pain, and we want to try to put off, for a variety of reasons, we want to treat them conservatively. Can we use this technology to help manage the knee arthritis pain? And then the second thing is, if we did this, like we did for Elizabeth, we did this, could we help with the recovery? Could we reduce narcotic usage postoperatively? Could we reduce the amount of physical therapy patients had? Could we short hospital stays, make this whole process less expensive, less risky? And so the first study we did, and this is a pretty cool study because, and it was orchestrated by a company called Avanos, and they're sponsors here, and they've helped us incredibly through this whole process, and I think in a fair way, and you're about to find out why, but they've been a very, very great partner in this. They helped orchestrate a multi-center trial, and we are the number one, our side is the number one contributor. We have more patients step up here and say, I want to be part of that trial than a number of other reasonably well-known places like Harvard, the University of Pennsylvania, the Mayo Clinic, the University of Virginia. And here we are. At the time it was the Lyman Medical Research Foundation. Now it's IRE, and it's better that way. But we outpaced all those other institutions in patient enrollment, and that's why we're going to be the senior author on this paper. But we looked at whether this would help patients. We compared it to an injection of this hyaluronic acid because we needed, I think that stuff's kind of like a placebo, and we needed to have some sort of a basis. So anyway, what we showed was that the RFA actually significantly improved knee pain, osteoarthritis-related knee pain, and the effect was lasting. At 6 months, the patients still have dramatic relief compared to the hyaluronic acid, and that the intervention was really safe and had minimal complications. So this was a pretty cool finding. It's going to be published probably in the Journal of Bone Endurance Surgery. We have a big process underway right now, and again, hats off to Alicia. And our second study was conducted entirely right here. So we were comparing the cooled and the traditional radiofrequency probes to a group of patients that received a sham intervention. And the same guys who brought this to my attention agreed to be the providers for this intervention, and Dr. Lovell and I admitted all the patients into this study, and all of our patients agreed to be part of it. Many of them are in this room today. It's really a pretty cool study to be part of it. We're getting the best level evidence from a design like this. And what we've shown is, and you guys are the first to hear this, but we're showing no benefit between the patients that received the placebo and the patients who received any of the interventions. And that's for hospital length of stay, for narcotic use, for reported pain or function. This is important information. Sorry, Elizabeth. But like I said, part of this process is just as much what works as what doesn't work. And knowing that is critical. That's kind of weird. So what we've done here in Coeur d'Alene is we've defined the use of this technology. And this will have sort of national implications. This works for the non-operative management of knee arthritis. And it doesn't seem to work to help people recover from knee replacement surgery. So we can decide who should get this better. So why are we doing all this? Like, those two studies, they could have been done, like the first one was done at a whole bunch of other centers, and if we didn't even participate, they would have, because it turned out all of our study, all the centers came out with identical data. Like they were trying to make sure that that we were doing it the same way as the guys at Harvard and the guys at all of our data. I got to sit on the steering committee and look at all the results, and they're all identical. So it's really consistent across the sites. If we didn't participate, they would have come to the same conclusion, right? These other studies. Why do we do it? Because we want to know what works, right? There's another study out there looking at a different technology to block those nerves. It uses ice instead of this thermal approach, but it's the same nerves, and they're looking at trying to do it before knee replacement surgery. And it's published, but it's a terrible study, and their results show that it really works. It really works, and that's what they, like on the product brochure and all their advertisements are saying, oh yeah, this works, it's been shown, here's a published study. in their study, they showed that there was a reduction in narcotics, but even in the patients that were treated, they received over 5 times more narcotics than our patients in our study. So they were just given huge prescriptions, and they didn't measure who took them. They just said, this is what we prescribed. And they compared 2 patient groups. One patient group that was done back when patients stayed in the hospital for 3 to 5 days. They compared them to a group of patients that were done at a whole different era of time. And they have these now reduced length of stays, so everyone's staying, 1 day in the hospital. And they said that they reduced the length of stay, right? But they were done at different eras, at different expectations. The patients weren't blinded, they weren't randomized. It was a terrible study, and it got published. We're figuring out what really does work here. Rather than publishing a study that's, bad science is more misleading than no science at all. And that's kind of what we're talking about. We're contributing to this important process of discovery. It has to be done. And it has to be done critically, and it has to be done thoughtfully, and we're committed to that. And Sean was right. He really nailed all this stuff. But when you start doing this stuff, people start paying attention, and surgeons want to be part of it. They went through this training process, right? And it's rigorous, man. They're going to these meetings. They're arguing about papers. They're trying to do the right thing, and then they get out in clinical practice, and they're like on an island, right? There's no academics. There's no all the stuff they spent learning. So having that aspect to our community brings the best surgeons here. And we've had 2 surgeons that are already committed to joining our practice. One of them wants to start a foot and ankle fellowship here in Coeur d'Alene. Another surgeon was one of the best shoulder surgeons in his fellowship to ever go through it. So they're coming here because we're doing this stuff, and it's really important. And we're creating these educational opportunities. Our long-term goal is to create a fellow. So you're going to hear from Tim Lommel and Mike Cody, and you've heard from Adam. And these guys are really smart, right? They spent their whole careers taking care of a whole bunch of people and learning all these tricks. And I was having dinner with Tim, and I was like, Tim, he's 70. I'm just kidding. He's going to retire, is what I'm trying to say. He's going to retire someday, and he's going to walk off into the sunset. And if he leaves, and all the stuff that he learned, all the stuff that he figured out, and he figured out the hard way, and sometimes that meant, learning it if he just takes that information and retires, it kind of sucks, right? I mean, it's all that. So we could train a fellow, and that fellow could spend 3 months with Tim Lovell and learn all those tricks, and then get around making those same mistakes that Tim made, and all those patients that Tim took. I'm just kidding. Picking on him, he's a good guy. No, but he's one of the smartest doctors I know, and Mike's the same way, and Adam's the same way, and we need to create a fellowship here so that people can learn from those guys, learn their stuff. And we're, this didn't exist, then we wouldn't talk so much. We would be ribbing each other. We wouldn't be sharing ideas. I wouldn't feel comfortable calling the famous Dr. Cody on the phone and saying, hey man, what's up? Do you want to go have a beer? Or you have any time this afternoon? Can I run this patient by you? Or hey Tim, I got someone I really want you to take a look at, give me an opinion on. Or, we're bridging practices, and it's really important for patients in our area to be able to do that. It's really critical. And we are boosting the local economy. Sean nailed that one. I'm not going to elaborate, but it's a big boost to our economy, and it's good for everybody that's associated with the process. I went over one. I just wanted to thank everyone for their support. This is really cool that you guys are all here, and we've had a great experience. But a huge amount of what we've done has really been due to Alicia's efforts. And I can't say that enough. I mean, she's taken this thing and just taken it to the next level. Greg Bauer and Doran Thomas at the anesthesia table here are skilled pain management providers who did a lot of the dirty work as far as bringing ideas to me and making sure they were trained to do the blocks. And our sponsors have said, gosh, we're kind of worried because these guys are CRNAs, they're not medical doctors. And they're doing pain management. Idaho's kind of a weird state where people that are not medical doctors can do some procedures that in other states you have to be a medical doctor to do. So they call it the Wild West. But their results are as good or better than the MDs doing the same procedures at those major facilities like Harvard, the Mayo Clinic, and the University of Virginia. you know, these are really major medical centers, and these guys are doing just as good work. So it's hats off to them. I guess I lost the rest of my thanks, so I'll just go. No, there are other guys too, like Tim's contribution and just all the people. It's awesome to have Sean. My brother Matt, it sounds nepotic to have him on the board. He brings a ton of experience in local nonprofits and wisdom to our table, so it's great to have. Thanks to Mike and Adam for being supportive and contributing surgeons. We're going to do a lot with this foundation. So I'm not going to, it's getting late. I want to say thank you very much. Have a nice night.